Hello everyone, this is Terry from True Marie Soapworks. Today I'm going to be showing you this layer soap and also show you how to make a pencil line or a mica line in your soap. I have included the recipe and supplies down below. Okay, let's get started. First, we add our sodium hydroxide to our cold distilled water. And then I also always measure out my sodium lactate right now so I don't forget it later when the lye solution has cooled. Sodium lactate is a natural ingredient and it's used to make your soap harder, and also it makes it release from the mold a lot easier. The next ingredient is coconut oil, and then we add our completely melted sustainable palm oil and microwave until completely melted. Next, we will be preparing our colorants. This time I wanted to show you mixing your colorants in bags. This is an alternative to using the palette knife that I like to use. This is completely not necessary. I just do it to take one extra step to make sure that I don't have specks in my final bars. I am diluting each of the micas with a little bit of olive oil, just enough to get it wet. The gold I used for the top, and I didn't show that in this video because I wasn't really happy with the way it came out. This color is Coral Sparkles, and this is pretty in pink, and the turquoise is called Tahitian Teal, and then there's the white that's titanium dioxide, and these are all from Elements Bath & Body. I'm paying special attention to the titanium dioxide because that one is notorious for clumps and specks in your final bar. Okay, now that we have our coconut oil and palm oil melted, we add our shea butter to the warm mixture and microwave until melted. In the meantime, I've already measured my avocado, castor, and olive oil, and now I'm adding it to my melted hard oils. Okay, now I have to decide what is 1/3 of this batch. So before I started, I already took down the weight of my batter bowl, and then I weighed my batter bowl and my oils, and I subtracted the weight of my batter bowl and divided by 3. And now I'm measuring 1/3 of my oils. And the same thing for the lye solution, you need to divide it by 3. And I've already figured that, so I'm adding 1/3 of my lye solution. And next I'm adding 1/3 of my total amount of kaolin clay, which is 1/2 teaspoon. And I'm adding it to my oils before I add my lye solution so I can mix as much as I want without getting any acceleration. And after it's completely mixed in and I'm happy with it, I add my fragrance. Again, it's 1/3 of the fragrance. And now we just add the measured 1/3 of our lye solution. Since I knew this fragrance doesn't accelerate, I was okay to stick blend and then add the colorant. But if this was a fragrance that would accelerate, I would go ahead and add the colorant first. And get your mold prepared. And for the bottom layer, I used the Coral Sparkles colorant. Okay, and you just cut the corner off the bag and add it to your solution. And mix it up. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of titanium dioxide. And I lightened it up quite a bit here. If I had to do it again, I would probably not put so much titanium dioxide in there. But it made a nice peach color. Okay, and you pour this at light trace or almost medium trace, but you want to make sure you have a really flat line. This one you don't want any bumps because this is a straight layer. So you don't want it to be too thick of a trace. And if you get anything on the side of your mold when you're pouring, make sure and clean that up so it's not in your finished bar that way. Now it's time to make the mica line. And for this tutorial I used a fine mesh strainer, but I think a powder sprayer, if you have one of those, works even better. And I used my palette knife just to help me get the mica to go where I wanted it to go. And here I'm trying to clean off the excess mica. And I found out later that if you wet your paper towel with isopropyl alcohol, it works much better. I covered the mold with plexiglass to help it set up faster. And also off camera, I set the timer for 15 minutes. Because you want your bottom layer to be set up before you add your next layer, because it's really easy to break through. I forgot on this first layer, but on the second layer I showed you that I used a bulb syringe. It's the kind that you use for babies to blow off the excess mica on this layer, and you do that on all the layers because you don't want too much mica on there because your layers might fall apart when you cut them. And here you just repeat and measure a third of everything and go through the steps again, and the next color will be the Tahitian teal. The fragrance I am using is called Modern Muse, also from Elements Bath & Body. And stick blend just until light trace. And cut the corner of the bag and just add your colorant. And then I add a little white as well to make it a light blue. I'm going for a spring color. Okay, it's ready now, and I just take the top layer off the mold, and you see how I use the spatula to pour on that so I don't break through the layer. And again, I sift the Gold Rush mica on top. And here's where I use the bulb syringe. Get off any excess, and sometimes you can see where you missed some parts and you can add more if you need to. Next, I cover the mold again and I set the timer for 15 minutes. And just mix together the last of the remaining ingredients, which is your oils, kaolin clay, fragrance, and then your lye water. And just stick blend until light trace. And add your pretty and pink mica solution. And a little bit of titanium dioxide as well. I was going for a really soft pink color. And I get my spatula again and just pour it on top of the previous layer. So once I finish pouring, I always cover it with my plexiglass, and then I use some saran wrap and cover it after that. And I put it on a heating pad and set that on either medium or high. It depends on what the ambient temperature is. And I usually leave that on for 30 minutes or so. And then I just leave it tucked in. And that way, it usually makes the colors more vibrant if I put it through gel, and also it releases easier from the mold. It creates a harder bar, and I think it causes less soda ash. I usually leave the soap in the mold for 48 hours. Sometimes I do 1 day, but sometimes, or most of the time, I usually do 2 days. This one I only did 1 day, and I wish I had done 2 days. So I kind of clean up the side. There's a lot of excess mica that gets on there from the sifting of the mica lines. And here I'm just dividing it by 8. When you make a soap with a mica line in it, it's always better to cut it on its side so that when you're dragging the knife, you're dragging it in the same direction as the mica line so that you don't have any smears downward. Today I'm using a knife to cut this batch. Sometimes I use a wire cutter, but sometimes a wire cutter causes little dots, and when you use a knife it just smears the whole thing and makes it smooth. So in this case I decided to use a knife to cut this batch. I used the same technique in this soap as I used in my technique video number 1. I didn't narrate that particular video because I was just learning video editing. And if you want to know how to make that one, this one is a great one to show you how. The only difference was that I used 4 layers instead of 3, and also I did a bumpy layer instead of a smooth layer. And I had the exfoliant vanilla bean in the whole batch, kind of similar to the kaolin clay in this batch. If you liked this video and would like to see more like this, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe. And also hit the bell if you would like to receive notifications for when I post a new video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.